Hello, I'm Brian Davis. If you're a newcomer to the cryptocurrency world, you want your questions answered by a credible source. As we all know, you can't always trust what you read on the internet. Well, I hope this interview will help. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with the CEO of Dash Core Group, Dash being one of the top 20 cryptocurrencies in the entire world. Ryan Taylor and I discussed everything from what exactly is cryptocurrency, how to buy and sell it, and how Dash fits into the mix. All your newbie questions answered by somebody at the top. My interview with Dash Core Group CEO Ryan Taylor is coming up right now. Well, if you're a newcomer to the cryptocurrency world, have you ever wanted to ask the questions you have in your mind of somebody who really knows the answers? Well, I've got that person on the other end of this camera here, and I am pleased to welcome the CEO of the Dash Core Group, Ryan Taylor, who's going to answer every newbie question I can throw at him today. Ryan, thank you very much for doing this.
No problem. Should be fun.
It should be fun. And I already told Ryan that the questions are going to be very newcomer oriented, and he has about a minute or so to answer each one because we don't want to lose anybody in the answers here. So again, I really
to put this challenge in perspective, that's like asking someone to explain the internet in a minute.
exactly.
So we'll do the best we can, but I can't promise anything.
Yeah, they will be very generalized answers, I'm sure, because one of these questions could take a half hour to answer. So
Probably.
Ryan's going to do his best, but I thought it would be fun to get somebody in the know and who's done this before as far as the cryptocurrency knowledge goes to do this with us. So let's start it off with the very first question. What is the blockchain?
Well, a blockchain is essentially a set of digital records that are linked to one another using cryptography. And cryptography basically ensures that all of that data cannot be tampered with. It's immutable. And each data element or each block in that chain of data is dependent on the contents of the previous block in order to be valid. And so what that means is it's essentially a ledger of data that is an append-only database. You can't go back and edit anything. And so that's basically what a blockchain is. The reason it's important is because it is the technology that underlies cryptocurrencies and many other use cases that are being explored in a way that has never been possible before. All databases prior to this are essentially changeable if they are maintained by a group. And this allows a group to maintain a database without worry that someone will go back and change something later.
Who was the original developer of blockchain? Was there a person or a group that actually invented blockchain?
You know, I actually don't know the full answer to that because Bitcoin was introduced to the market by Satoshi Nakamoto, who is an anonymous person or group of people. They had a presence online only, and no one knows to this day who they are. And they introduced the concept of cryptocurrency as we know it today in the form of Bitcoin. They borrowed heavily from research and previous attempts at this type of implementation in their white paper and in the technology that they actually introduced. And I honestly don't know the answer to whether there were any blockchains that existed prior to Bitcoin. I believe the answer is yes, that there were blockchain or blockchain-like technologies available prior to that, and that Satoshi Nakamoto essentially stitched these various technologies together in a unique way to create Bitcoin.
So how, this is one of those questions that could take half an hour to answer. How does cryptocurrency work with the blockchain?
So most people think of the world of electronic data, and they think of the world of copy and paste, because that's what they do on their computers. They can copy a file and put it into an email and send another copy to somebody else. Essentially, what cryptocurrency does is it relies on that blockchain technology in order to keep a record of how many coins each address, or think of it like an account, is holding at any one point in time. And because that database is immutable, everyone can agree on the state of that database at any one point in time. And so what cryptocurrencies do is you basically have to have the cryptographic keys that are associated with a particular account or address in order to move the coins. And so essentially ownership of those cryptographic keys is ownership of those coins. And so cryptocurrency is just a brilliant implementation of a blockchain used to transfer around units on this digital ledger, essentially. And so yeah, I think that the long and short of it is they basically use the immutability of the blockchain in order to keep track of what everybody has and make sure that nobody's making it up. You can go back all the way to the beginning of the Bitcoin blockchain and check every single transaction, every single movement of funds, and validate that that the entire chain is authentic and no one printed any Bitcoins out of thin air that the protocol doesn't allow.
Now, blockchain is also used for other things besides just cryptocurrency, isn't it?
Yes. There are many uses for it, and I think the number of uses will continue to expand. Really, you can store any data that you want to be publicly viewable, publicly accessible in a decentralized distributed ledger of data. And so far, some of the more interesting concepts that people have come up with, one is called smart contracts. These allow people to essentially program and run programs in these decentralized networks, and the programs themselves execute and are recorded. The current state of those programs is executed in a decentralized way. In essence, your program, if you program something for a smart contract platform like Ethereum, it's executing that code in thousands of locations across the network all at once. And so it can be used to basically create unstoppable, trustless code that will run no matter what happens. And that has some really interesting use cases that I won't go into because I'm cut off to a minute. Another is just records retention. You can record, you can take anything. You can take the King James Bible and you can send it through what's called a hashing algorithm, and out the other side comes a short list of letters and numbers called a hash. And you can record that hash on a blockchain, and it guarantees at any point in the future you can hash that record and prove that it existed on a certain date and time. That has implications for wills and legal documents and all kinds of things of interest to the legal industry. Basically, any data that you would want to be unalterable and provable, it is a great technology for, and there are obviously many more applications for it. Banks and other financial institutions are looking to use blockchain or distributed ledger technology to agree between themselves in a common database on financial transactions. And that means that they don't need to keep their own separate records and reconcile those records between each other. It happens automatically because it's in one distributed database. And so there's tons of cost efficiencies and things in title records and property records and all kinds of industries that I think will be unlocked by this technology.
Yeah, that's another one of those questions I'm sure we could talk about for half an hour plus, just that one
Yeah,
question. No,
easily.
absolutely. Okay, moving on. Why do people use the term Bitcoin when they're talking about cryptocurrency in general? I think you've somewhat answered that a little bit, but why does everybody just say Bitcoin when they're talking about cryptocurrency?
Well, a lot of people, I think, aren't aware that there are actually thousands of them, each trying to kind of compete in different ways. Um, the media obviously focuses on Bitcoin. The Bitcoin blockchain is by far the most valued by the marketplace. Um, and so it is dominant within the cryptocurrency space. So it's a bit like people calling facial tissues Kleenex. I think that it is a dominant brand in the industry, and so it gets that level of recognition that Xerox or Kleenex or some of these other brands get.
Now, you mentioned thousands of cryptocurrencies. Do you know at this point the actual number? How many different cryptocurrencies are there?
I don't think it's a knowable thing. Um, I I think that if you go to a website like coinmarketcap.com, almost all of them are probably listed there. But anyone could start a cryptocurrency at any point in time. At one point, there were websites that allowed you to just enter a few attributes and would spit out the code for you for your own cryptocurrency. You could create you know, a cryptocurrency in your own name if you wanted to.
And
And so
I know some people did, didn't they?
they did, yes. And so I think that it's an unknowable number, but I'd say a good indicator at any one point in time is probably to pull up coinmarketcap.com and look at the number of assets listed there. It is in the thousands. So
Now, are all cryptocurrencies able to be bought and sold, or are some of them like a private thing?
uh, there are private blockchains, and there's no reason why you can't have a private currency as well that runs across it. One probably exists. I can't imagine that one probably exists, but I'm not aware of any where like a small group of restricted users are using them. But I bet if I ran through that list of a couple thousand, I bet there's a few of them out there, or there may be some that aren't listed because they are private. So it's entirely possible to have that. Interesting use case. I don't know what I would use that for, but I'm sure someone has an idea.
Now, we're talking newcomer questions here, and somebody who has no idea of what this goes on. If you buy, say, a Dash or a Bitcoin, do you get an actual coin? How does it work?
Well, these are strictly digital. There are actually physical coins that you can buy that even have the private keys stored underneath a holographic film that you can peel off. But those are very rare and expensive. But you can get a physical Bitcoin. But in reality, they all only exist digitally. So it is a bit of a bridge for a lot of people to conceptualize. But money is whatever we say it is as a society. It has been shells, it's been sheets of leather, it's been pelts of animals, it's been little round discs made of various types of metal. We've used all kinds of things as money over the millennia, and this is the digitization of money. Media used to be print only, and then we introduced records, and you could consume audio. And eventually we digitized the audio. Eventually we digitized newspapers. Eventually we've digitized a lot of things. There's no reason money can't be digitized. And in fact, there are a lot of advantages to it. It can be sent around the world within seconds. It can be transported on a thumb drive. It can be, you know, transmitted from satellites. And so it has portability advantages. It can be infinitely divisible. So you can do micropayments with it. It's fast, it's cheap. There's lots of advantages to this form of money, and that's why I believe that it will find use cases within the payments ecosystem.
So how do you actually buy a cryptocurrency, and is it safe to buy and sell them online?
There are service providers that will buy or sell, or you know, in the sense of they're brokers. They will facilitate the trade for you. That's probably the easiest method for most people. Websites like Uphold or Coinbase are great websites that have easy user interfaces for beginners. And you can link your bank account, transfer some funds, and then, you know, make purchases. So that's one way to get in. For a little bit more sophistication, you can use an exchange. There are websites like Kraken or you know, I know that Coinbase hosts its own Coinbase Pro. So if you get a little more sophisticated, there are dozens and dozens of exchanges that you can go to and actually do the trading yourself. It's a bit like trading stocks. There's an order book of buy and sell orders, and you can put in a market order or a limit order or whatever you would normally do with stock trading. So for people that are familiar with stock trading, it would be very similar to that. And finally, you can always trade live with another human being. There are websites like localbitcoins.com. Dash has a website called dashes.com, and you can actually physically meet people. Do it in a safe place, you know. Don't meet them in a dark alleyway, but with cash. But you can meet them at a Starbucks and actually do the transaction, hand them physical cash, and have them send you some coins. There's other unique websites like wallofcoins.com where you can make a bank deposit. You can go to somebody's, go to a Citibank and make a deposit, and they'll send you coins. And so there's a number of different ways that you can get in, and there's pros and cons to each one. And so probably the easiest is like a Uphold.
So why did the price fluctuate so much? This is another one, half an hour answer. Why did the price of cryptocurrencies fluctuate so much in the past year and a half or so?
I'll give you the 5-second answer. For a period of time in 2017, there was more demand than supply. And for 2018, supply outstripped demand. These are marketplaces, and at the end of the day, the number of people wanting to buy or sell dictates the price. And so I think in 2017, the longer answer is there was a great deal of hype. There's a great deal of media coverage. There's a great deal of excitement, and I think people were getting in at any cost. And I think in 2018, reality set in. And I think that a lot of that hype has much like the dot-com bubble, there's a lot of promise in these technologies. So I'm not sure whether the speculation is warranted or not, but there's at least a reason for speculators to want to enter the space. And ultimately, you know, when the hype really took off, it was inevitable that it had to come back down.
Is there a concern with cryptocurrency that governments are going to say, wait, we don't want you to replace us, or that kind of thing? Is government regulation a concern when it comes to cryptocurrencies?
Well, I think that there is a lot of economic benefit and value to these technologies. And so I think ultimately governments will react in different ways, but the ones that react in a healthier way will attract more investment, they'll attract more users, they'll attract more of the benefit that comes from these technologies. And so I think that there is an economic incentive for them to be open to it. And I think that ultimately the market will dictate whether or not they get adopted or not. In this country, I think that regulators were caught a little off guard by it. I don't think they saw it coming because they typically look to the banks and other financial institutions to figure out where the innovation is coming from. And this was more of a grassroots effort, driven by passionate people. And so I think that they were caught a little off guard. I think 2018, they really figured out they need to understand the technology better and set down some rules and so forth. But they are proving to be very open to it and do recognize that there's value here. And so I think that they're taking a very pragmatic approach to it. It's going to take many years for the regulations to catch up with the technology and for the regulators to understand the technology space a bit better. Finance has been a sleepy little industry for a long, long time without a great deal of innovation. Bonds still work the same way they worked 50 years ago. Stocks still work the same way they worked 50 years ago. And all of a sudden, they're being hit with an incredible amount of technology innovation, and I think that they have to figure out how to react to it.
Okay, let's move on to your real expertise, and that is Dash itself. How and why and when did Dash come about?
Dash was launched in January of 2014, so it's one of the older cryptocurrencies. It was started by a gentleman named Evan Duffield, who had some ideas for Bitcoin and wasn't getting much receptivity with the Bitcoin developers to some of the ideas. And so he really started it as an experiment to see what was possible with cryptocurrencies, whether he could implement some of his ideas. And lo and behold, he found that there were a lot of other developers and community members that sprung up to support the project because they really believed in some of the vision that he had. That vision has grown and expanded and become much richer, I would say, over the years. But we really started as an innovation proving ground, I would say, for what's possible with cryptocurrencies. And lo and behold, we've been pretty successful with it. We've got around 5,000 merchants around the globe. And growing at a pretty rapid pace. Our user base continues to expand. Our transaction counts continue to expand even in a bear market like the one we've been in. And we continue to roll out new and better innovations over time. We're the first to market with many, many different technologies that have been mimicked or copied by other projects. And so we're onto something. I think that people really look to Dash as one of the innovators in the space.
Now, knowing a little bit about Dash and having some myself, what is a wallet and how do you keep your Dash in your wallet? What is that like? What is that all about?
Wallets are software products. There are hardware wallets as well that I won't address here. But essentially a wallet is a piece of software that holds the cryptographic keys that I referenced earlier and allows a user to easily manage the currency that they do have in a kind of a more intuitive way. And so all that a wallet is think of it like the wallet in your pocket. It's a place to store your money. And so, the same way that you put your dollar bills in your wallet, you put your coins into one of these software products for storage. And it allows you to easily send the command to say, okay, I want to send this amount to this other address or this other user. And so that's all a wallet is. It's a piece of software that allows you to manage your funds.
What's a masternode?
So let's start with the terminology of a node. A node is simply a server or an instance of software on a network. And anyone is free to download the software that runs the Dash network. The network is run by our users. So anyone can download that and run a node. But Dash has actually two layers to its network. There's a layer called the masternode layer of the network. And masternodes essentially perform specialized functions for the network. Anyone is able to upgrade their node from a regular node to a masternode. The only prerequisite is that you have to prove ownership over 1,000 Dash. Currently, that's about $70,000 to $75,000 worth of Dash. And so it prevents any one person from controlling a large number of these masternodes. And that prevents a certain type of attack called a Sybil attack, in which you could cheaply and easily spin up thousands of servers using a service provider like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft's cloud platform. And so it really prevents any one entity from controlling that layer of the network. That allows us to rely on that layer of the network much more reliably to be decentralized and widely distributed. And that allows us to provide instant send services, private send services, and a host of other services that we're going to be rolling out in the future in a safe way. And so it's there to enable new uses for the network and enable new services. Masternodes also provide the backbone of the network. They relay messages around, they keep full copies of the blockchain. And for all of those services, masternodes are paid by the network. A portion of the transaction fees and a portion of new coins that are kind of created over time as defined by the protocol or a set of rules that underlie the network, they're granted payments for that service. And so at present, masternodes are paid about 70 Dash a year to provide those services to the network. And so that allows them to provide good hardware, good fast services. It allows our network to be fast, and it has a lot of great benefits to it. The last thing that masternodes are is, I think of them like our shareholders. They have a significant amount of Dash, and they have a significant interest in the outcome of the network's adoption. And so they also get a vote. They get a vote in our proposal system, and anyone is free to put a proposal up to the Dash proposal system, but only masternodes are allowed to vote on those. And masternodes essentially act as stewards for that available fund, and they make decisions about where that goes. And so Dash Core Group, we put our proposal up every month to receive funding, and the masternodes determine whether or not we get that.
Is there a particular geographic area of the world right now that cryptocurrency and Dash in particular is growing, is really starting to become popular?
Well, in general, the adoption of these are tending to take place in developing countries. And what we found with Dash is that our user base is exploding in Venezuela. And that is an area of the world that is experiencing hyperinflation. I've read reports that inflation may have hit as high as 1,000,000% in Venezuela last year. And so users in an environment like that are looking for an alternative. And we've personally seen the adoption of over 2,500, 2,700 merchants in Venezuela, I think, at this point. And that's growing at a pretty rapid pace. Our user base there has grown at, I think over 10,000 users a month or something like that, in part due to a partnership that we have with a mobile phone manufacturer there. And so we've seen an incredible appetite for cryptocurrencies there. And it's not just the hyperinflation that we're solving. We're solving real world problems for these people. Their infrastructure doesn't work well. Large payments are difficult, even if you do have a credit card or debit card. And so we do solve a real world problem for those individuals. So we think that inflation is a big trigger for people to try an alternative. But so is financial freedom. In countries where people don't enjoy the level of financial freedom that we have here in the US, sending an international payment can be onerous and require licenses from the government and things that most businesses don't have the capacity to kind of engage with. And so when you see those type of onerous things in place, you see people attempting to use this for cross-border transactions and for international commerce. And so I think that there's certain use cases that we're seeing that businesses and consumers are more willing to adopt than, say, in the United States, where we have a pretty stable financial system and pretty stable payments network.
All right, final question. Time for your elevator pitch. As a newcomer, why would I want to use or invest in Dash in 2019?
Well, I think that there are niche use cases that Dash can do particularly well. I think if you're sending international remittances and want to avoid the fees of some of the remittance companies, it is a great solution. And if you're sending money to Latin America on the receiving end, it's actually usable in a lot of the countries that Dash is doing well in, particularly Venezuela. I'd say that users of Dash have a lot of different reasons why they're using it. Some of them are philosophical. They don't believe in the government issued cryptocurrency, or the government issued currencies are viable in the long term. And so for them, this is a way of exiting that system. I think for a lot of users, they have practical use cases that it's applicable to. We're making inroads in the cannabis industry as an example, particularly in the business-to-business space. And those businesses don't have access to a lot of digital financial services. Everything's done in cash. And so this is an alternative to that system. Sending international payments. You don't get much visibility over the cost or timeliness of a payment when you send an international wire. It goes through multiple banks. Even the bank can't tell you how much it's going to cost. And so a lot of users are finding that cryptocurrencies are a good alternative to that. And then there's just a ton of different use cases for it that I won't even go into. I would say explore the website, see how other people are leveraging it and gaining benefit from it. I think it's just a good thing to learn about. I think this technology is coming. I think it's going to play a larger and larger role in our lives over the years and decades. And I think that it's just important to learn about it early on, the same way that it was important to learn early on about the internet. I think the longer you put this off, the poorer position you're putting yourself in the future. And then I'd say, why to pick Dash in particular? Well, it's fast, it's cheap, and we're focused on ease of use. And so I think that what you'll find is throughout 2019, our ease of use and the ability for you to just use it is just going to keep getting better and better. When we put our Evolution release out there, I think it'll be as easy to use as Venmo or Square Cash or any of these apps that they're already used to. And so I would say, unless you want to learn how the plumbing works for some of these networks and are just interested in learning how it can be applicable to your life, I think Dash is the easiest to use, and that would be my argument for Dash.
Ryan, thank you very much for doing this. It's been great having you on and answering all the newbie questions that I could think of. I'm sure
Yeah.
there were questions that other newcomers would have that I forgot to ask, but a great overview and great having you. Thank you so much for doing this.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Alternative.